That's what I'm thinking of. That's the repair. He was like going to the girl. He didn't get the beer. I ain't going to that.
Well, folks, as we leave our 1870 depot, if you folks will look off the east side of the train and a little bit toward the rear of the train, across the small canyon next to us and atop that huge pile of tailings, you folks will see the remains of the combination shaft. The combination shaft at one time was the deepest mine in the world. Still to this day, the shaft, which is directly in front of that great big wooden head frame, goes straight down 3,265 feet into the earth. That's about 2/3 of a mile. The combination shaft was a joint mining effort between 4 mining companies on the Comstock. The worst problem, there was no main vein of ore. That shaft only brought up some very low-grade ore. After all the arguing, bickering, blame calling, and fighting, it was finally declared a $7 million financial disaster. One of the very few mines on the Comstock Road that never even paid for itself. Now, folks, we're about to pass under a 160-year-old ore trestle. This is how ore was brought from mines on the west side of the rails, the Collar Mine, the Savage Mine, the Potosi Mine, the Hale and Norcross Mine, and the Gould and Curry Mine, over to the crusher mills that were on the east side of the rails. Now, folks, as we go underneath this trestle, I'd like you to take a look at those large rocks laying on the ground under it. Those large rocks laying there are actual gold and silver ore that has laid on the ground 150 years. Now, the reason those rocks are on the ground is when they brought the ore across this trestle, if the rock was too big to go through the crusher machineries, well, folks, they just pushed that rock right off the top of the trestle. So if any of you folks are feeling a little bit lucky today, come on back later with a great big hammer. You can go to work on one of those rocks and you might just strike your fortune. A little bit luckier than one of those slot machines. Now, when mining began on the Comstock Road around 1860, the only way to get the ore down to the mills on the Carson River was by wagon and mule. It was very expensive, and it took over a week for a wagon load of ore to make it down the mountains. In 1869, a man named William Sharon on the board of directors of the Bank of California thought it would be profitable for that bank to build a railroad between Carson City and Virginia City. Construction began in February 1869 with 1,500 workers employed to build the line. Coming the 21 miles from Carson City to Virginia City, 7 tunnels were dug through the Washoe Mountains, and the railroad comes up nearly 1,800 feet in altitude, making us one of America's true mountain railroads. Coming through those canyons, the railroad makes enough twists, turns, and curves that it equals 18 complete circles before arriving here in town. And folks, all those twists and turns gave us the nickname of the crookedest railroad in the world. It was often said at that time that if you wanted to go a mile on the Comstock, you could walk that mile, or you could take the train for 3 miles. Clever McGreedy, and they had an idea. They started the rumor on the San Francisco Stock Exchange that the Warren Bullion shaft was about to hit the big bonanza. Well, in gold country in the 1870s, when rumors like that started, investors came very quickly. In less than 3 weeks' time, more than $3.7 million was invested in stock in the Warren Bullion shaft. And as soon as all that money cleared the San Francisco Stock Exchange and ended up as cash in their pockets, the roasting just smiled and declared this shaft a bust and closed it. But don't feel too bad now for all the people that were swindled out of all their money investing in it. They all did get something. They all got the shaft. Well, folks, if you'll take a look down into one of our beautiful Nevada canyons in the early morning hours, you often... Now, the East Yellow Jacket Mine was one of the highest producing mines on the Comstock Lode. It's also the site of the greatest disaster ever on the Comstock. In late 1869, a fire broke out at the 800-foot level in this mine shaft, and folks, that fire took the lives of 39 miners. Eventually, they were able to recover 34 of those poor souls, but 5 of them were just simply never found. Well, folks, we're about to enter tunnel number 4. For those of you who are afraid of the dark, when we go through the tunnel, please close your eyes. Tunnel number 4 is 456 feet long from end to end. It took those workers in 1869 2.5 months to dig this tunnel through solid rock using pick and shovel only. Now, those miners that worked on the Comstock Lode were a pretty tough bunch. They had a nickname at that time. They were called muckers, and it was a name of respect for them. They would work in those mines 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, and temperatures around 120 degrees at the lower levels. Now, at those temperatures, they could only work about 15 minutes at a time. Then they'd have to proceed upward in the main shaft and off the side of what was called a drift. At the end of that drift, they kept ice and cold water. They'd cool down a bit, then go back to work for about 15 minutes more. Now, during that period of time, miners around the world made about 80 cents a day for their labor. Miners on the Comstock Lode were in such high demand, they became the highest paid miners in the world at $4 a day. Now, folks, that's the equivalent of $66 per hour now. And at the end of their shift, folks, they could go to Virginia City, they could order a 2-inch thick steak weighing about 2 pounds and a great big plate of beans, and that meal would cost them 40 cents. Now, coming around the next curve off the east side of the brick front building with the 3 steel doors on the front of it at one time was the Bank of California. This area of Gold Hill was known as the Maynard Block, one of the cash and stock exchange areas along the Comstock Road. Now, coming around the curve to the grade crossing off the east side, you'll see the monument to the Liberty Volunteer Fire Company. These were the brave volunteer firefighters that protected Gold Hill from fires in the mines and the desert. This monument is located right where the original fire hall once stood, just next to the railroad tracks. The original fire hall, well, it burned up in a fire. Past the road crossing is the 1869 station of the Virginia and Truckee Railroad built from the town of Gold Hill. The V&T Railroad owned and operated this railroad station from 1869 until this line to Virginia City was abandoned in 1938. At that time, the railroad sold the station and all the property around it to Story County, Nevada, for the sum of $1. Now, folks, coming up to the rear of the train off the west side on that little rise to our rear and above us on the rise, you'll see the remains of the North Yellow Jacket shaft. Now, a little bit about how it all worked, folks. That large tower up on the hill is called the head frame. That's what was used to hoist the ore up from the depths in large steel buckets. That ore would then be dumped down those two steep wooden chutes into what's called the ore bin at the bottom. Well, as we pass this ore bin, you'll see three doors on the front of it that would be opened. That ore would then be dumped into railroad cars to be taken for crushing and processing. And folks, as the train does pull to a stop here, something a little... Once we pass that little bluff, there's a small canyon on the west side I'd like you to see. And folks, the reason I want you to see that canyon is that is the very canyon that Peter O'Reilly and Patrick McLaughlin made the discovery of gold in 1859. Now, before this little canyon played out, it yielded over $40 million in gold and silver. And folks, that dollar figure is based on 1875 value when that gold was selling for $9 an ounce. Today, it would be worth about $8.4 billion. Right here on the west side where it all started, black people considered it gold. picks and their shovels that plowed their sluice boxes, and it gave them nothing but trouble. And the deeper they dug, the worse it got. They began to accumulate huge piles of that blue muck next to their mining claims. So much so that they started to haul it by the wagon load to the brand new town of Virginia City and throw it on the streets. Now they did that because that blue muck dried so hard and packed so well, it made excellent tracking for the wagons and mules, especially during those wet winter months. Folks, about 2 years went by. In late 1862, someone finally assayed that infernal blue muck. Once it came back at nearly $3,000 per ton in silver. So the rush to the Comstock was on. People from all over the globe started coming to the richest gold and silver strike in world history. Almost overnight, Virginia City's population swelled from just several hundred to nearly 35,000 people. And folks, that legend that you might have heard, folks, that legend is actually true. That at one point in time, the streets of Virginia City, Nevada, had been paved with silver. Now, still to this day, there is over 750 miles of mine shafts and tunnels going down 3,000 feet deep and even deeper than that up here along the Comstock Road. By the time the mining played out, over $750 million in gold and silver had been pulled on the Comstock Road. And folks, do remember that's based on 1875 dollar value. Today it would be worth hundreds of billions of dollars. You look off the west side of the train, way up the hill, the great big beige building with a red roof was the Fourth Ward School. Built in 1876, it graduated its last class of students in 1936. When they built that building, they put a brand new modern innovation in it. It became very popular with the students. Still popular in schools today. It's called indoor toilets. Coming up on the east side of the train is our restoration and repair shop. This is where we work so hard to keep these beautiful antique locomotives and cars running and in good condition. Those shops are located in the same location the original V&D shops were built way back in 1869. Now, coming around the curve by our water tower, our view off the west side is blocked by the hill. But once we reach our shop crossing, if you look just above our rails, right above us is the Collar Mine Tour. That is an outstanding tour. I do recommend it. They do take you down into the original 1861 Collar Mine. They show you how hard rock mining was done here on the Comstock over 150 years ago. Even give you a sample of total darkness. The best part of the tour of the Collar Mine, they bring you back out. Now folks, once we clear this little bluff of tailings off the east side, you get a glimpse out 6 Mile Canyon way out to those Carson Plains. It was out on those Carson Plains in 1860. There was a little ink spot on the map, a place called Desert Wells. Desert Wells was a Pony Express stop for the brief time the Pony Express ran. It became a stagecoach stop after that. Nothing more than 2 wells, 2 stables, a 4-room stone hotel, and of course, a saloon. In 1862, a young man came to Desert Wells. He stayed there about 3 weeks before moving to Virginia City. His name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens. When he arrived in Virginia City, he got a job at the newspaper in town, the Territorial Enterprise. For the years he lived in our town, he wrote a lot of stories and articles for that newspaper. And while he lived in Virginia City, he also changed his name to that which we know him as today, Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain went on to become one of the greatest authors in all of American history, writing wonderful books of stories. Stories that are as wonderful to read today as they were when he wrote them over 100 years ago. And so Mark very much for riding with us today on this little trip through history. Now, while you're here in Virginia City, please do take advantage of some of the shops and museums. I know you'll enjoy them. And wherever your travels do take you, please.
No, I'm not even in California. I'm in Nevada. I'm in Nevada. Sorry.